welcome today. My name is David Cugino, and in today's book review, I've got my favorite book about emotions. And not only that, I've got some good topics I want to review today in today's book review. So the book I have for us today is Master Your Emotions by Thibaut Maurice. I'm pretty sure I say his name different every time. A practical guide to overcome negative and better manage your. So when it comes to feelings and emotions, we experience them every day. So tonight, for example, I just got back from fighting and I got kicked in the head really, really hard. Luckily, he hit me right here, so I ate it, but I was a little emotional about it. It was a little hard for me to focus for the rest of class. But we still managed to learn and we managed to get through, and that's all that matters. But we're going to talk about pain and negative emotions because we experience them almost every day. Learning a new skill that you're going to fail over and over. You are going to fail the skill over and over, but then you get depressed because you think your teacher or your mentor is going to lose patience with you and just not teach you anymore, or you're afraid that you're going to learn the skill, but then you're going to periodically forget your knowledge over and over, or worse, you won't be dedicated to learning. You'll have some excuse as to why you don't want to learn. You'll have some excuse as to why you're not retaining the knowledge. But when it comes to that, though, that is all based on you, so there's a flaw in here. But that all is based around you. How you view your emotions and how you handle them. And the example I just said, that could make you depressed. That could make you upset. But when you get upset, there is a way to beat your mind so you can still focus and still learn. Because honestly, I have days where I feel bad or upset. Like I'll mess up at my job or make a mistake at my job, and then all of a sudden I'm like, wow, I'm terrible because I'm learning a new skill at my job. And I'm start to feel bad, and I'm like, well, I keep messing up, and I feel like she's going to lose patience with me. Well, that's not how it works, but we're learning, and we're getting faster. Emotions, because I'm like, you are learning. You got to keep in mind, you are learning. Now, obviously, if 2 years go by, and I'm still learning, then there's an issue. That means you're not learning. That means you're spending all this time not learning. Because time is money, as some might say. But we're going to dive into the book here. So, the nature of emotions. This is on page 17. So listen to what Thibaut Maurice has to say here. Listen to this. To start taking control of your emotions, you must accept they are transient. You must learn to let them pass without feeling the need to identify strongly with them. You must allow yourself to feel sad without adding commentaries such as, I shouldn't be sad, or what's wrong with me. Instead, you must allow reality to just be. No matter how mentally tough you are, you still experience sadness, grief, or depression in your life. Hopefully not at the same time and not continually. At times you feel disappointed, betrayed, insecure, resentful, or ashamed. You'll doubt yourself and doubt your ability to be the person you want to be. But that's okay because emotions come, but more importantly, they go. Your negative emotions are not bad or useless. You may blame yourself for experiencing negative emotions, or perhaps you see yourself as mentally weak. You may even believe something is wrong with you. However, despite what your inner voice may say, your emotions aren't bad. Emotions are simply emotions, nothing more. As such, being depressed doesn't make you less of a person than you were 3 weeks ago when you were happy. Feeling sad now doesn't mean you'll never be able to laugh again. Remember this, the way you interpret emotions, as well as the blame game you engage in creates suffering, not the emotions themselves. Negative emotions can actually be helpful. Sometimes you need to touch rock bottom before you can reach the top. Even the toughest people on earth become depressed. Elon Musk never imagined he would have a mental breakdown, but he did, and he bounced back. After losing his fiancée, Abraham Lincoln was depressed for months. This tragic event didn't prevent him from becoming president of the United States. Negative emotions often serve a purpose. They may serve as a wake-up call. They may help you learn something positive about yourself. Of course, when you're under their spell, it may be difficult to look at the bright side of things. But in hindsight, you may realize emotions, even sad ones, had their role to play in your ultimate success. So that's something to think about. The role they had their role to play in your ultimate success. They may be a wake-up call. And notice the examples he used, Elon Musk and Abraham Lincoln. Elon Musk having a breakdown, that's a pretty big deal. People who have mental breakdowns, especially with a mind like his and a life like his, that's a big deal. Abraham Lincoln losing his fiancée, that's also a big deal. He lost a woman he loves and has to start all over trying to find someone else while trying to get into politics. But You cannot let emotions stop you. Like you said, they're just emotions. There's negative emotions and there's positive emotions, but the negative ones are just there. They are just things that are there and are there for a reason. But really think about that. You may believe something's wrong with you. In reality, it's not. Emotions are simply emotions. Now the next section that we have is probably the section I like the most out of this. Now this is 10 more pages ahead, so this is very good, and it's also, not only is it a good section, but it makes you think, because honestly negative emotions, they play a big role in your life. And you may not think about it, but honestly, like you said earlier, if you're sad and depressed continually, that is an issue. You need to talk to somebody. Now if you are sad and depressed for a day, that's not a big deal, because that's just life. That's just life that happens to you. But listen to what else he has to say here about negative emotions. Listen to this. Whenever you experience negative emotions, watch for emotions that give you more energy. So-called negative emotions like anger can help you overcome even more disempowering emotions, like hopelessness. Only you know how you feel. Therefore, if anger feels better, accept it. Did you know you create a lot of unnecessary pain in your life? Yeah. Each time you look onto a thought or hold onto an emotion, you suffer. A great example of this is how you react to physical pain. Whenever you feel pain, your first reaction is to interpret it. When you do so, you generate negative thoughts. Your identification with these thoughts is what creates mental suffering. Below are some of the ideas that may cross your mind in these situations. What if this pain never goes away? What if I can't do X, Y, and Z anymore because of the pain? What if it gets worse? What if I undergo surgery? What if I can't go to work? I have an important project I must finish on time. It's going to be challenging. I don't have money. How will I pay hospital bills if things get worse? The internal dialogue creates suffering that does nothing to help solve the problem. You can still function properly and take appropriate actions without dwelling on any of the above worries. Negative emotions are not the problem. The mental suffering you create out of these emotions is. So honestly, when life hits you hard, you creating the mental suffering out of these emotions is what makes it worse. Because honestly, there is a story of the guy between a rock and a hard place. It's the guy who got his arm stuck in a rock and had to cut his arm off in order to survive. Now, if you watch the interview with this guy, he says things could have been worse. There's a story of a lady who fell out of a plane and then was revived by fire ants, and she said the same thing, things could be worse. Now, is that the mindset that things could be worse? Well, honestly, your problems are like what he said here. What if I can't go to work? I have an important project I must finish on time. You could go in and not have a job. You could go in and your bills not be paid and you lose your home. And then you have to live on the streets. You could be living on the streets and be suffering so mentally that you have no desire to make your life better. Because I think the really scary thing about negative emotions is you can ruin your life with your own two hands with negative emotions. If you do not solve them or take care of them or deal with them without the mental suffering, there are people who ruin their lives with their own two hands. Do you feel bad for these people? Honestly, you shouldn't, but you should also be like, you should have gotten help. It does not hurt to ask for help in life. Especially with depression, hopelessness, sadness, it does not hurt to ask for help. Why? Because sometimes life just hits you harder than others. Sometimes you're so stressed out that you don't. Sometimes you're so stressed out you don't even focus on being sad or hopeless, but then it hits you when you're not stressed out. The one time you're not is when you're just like, wow, this is my life and how stressed I am. But the internal dialogue creates suffering but does nothing to help solve the problem. That's the other thing. The pain you create is not going to solve the problem. It's just going to make it worse. When I mess up on my machine at work and I get sad about it, I could create all this pain and be like, nope, I'm never going to learn this job. I'm going to get demoted. I'm going to lose pay. My friends at work are going to make fun of me. Well, in reality, friends make fun of you. It's honestly, who cares? Probably be out of love. Not only that, but the worst thing is you lost your promotion and then you got back down to an easier job. Not really a job you want to do, but to an easier job. Or a harder job, depending on your situation. But reality is, see, that's the thing with reality. Reality is painful. You ever think about that? Reality is painful because it's real. We don't want to live in the real world, and the real world is honestly painful. And you're probably wondering, well, what do you mean by the real world is painful? Well, how you solve this mental suffering out of negative emotions. You just treat them like emotions, and they just go away by you making your life better. You make money by getting up early to go do a job you either like or don't like. You deal with relationships by people not being a man of their word or people not having good character, loving relationships, and you learn the hard way the easy way, or you learn the hard way. And the hard way may last a very long time, because that is the world that our Lord put us in. But reality, honestly, is painful. But just think about that. The internal dialogue creates suffering, but does nothing to help solve the problem, and the mental suffering you create out of these emotions is the problem. So think about that. The third and final section that we have here in the book is also 2 pages ahead, because I really like this section, because people do blame their pain on like people can't be polite to people because they're having a bad day. And I understand that's hard. Being polite to your coworkers is hard when having a bad day. When you have a bad day, it's hard to be motivated to do anything, like cleaning, getting up in the morning for your job, working out and whatnot. I mean, in real life, it's painful. It's painful, but the reason why people write books like this and people learn about it is because there are ways to beat it to where you can still be functional and still live a super successful life. Because back in the day, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago, emotions existed, but it wasn't like identified as depression, sadness, hopelessness. Like there wasn't therapists, there was no one to talk to or anything. So that's why back in the day, people say like, oh, back when men were men, back when we were man's men, or like, honestly, part of that's true, but also that doesn't mean that those famous people in history like Teddy Roosevelt, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, that doesn't mean that they didn't experience emotions. They did, because life does get hard. Life is hard. But listen to what he says here about problems. What you don't focus on doesn't exist. Ooh, that sounds interesting, but listen to what he says here. What you don't focus on doesn't exist. A problem only exists when you give it your attention. Ooh, when you only give it your attention. From your mind's perspective, what you don't give any thoughts to doesn't exist. Let's take a hypothetical example. Imagine you lost your legs. If you accept that fact immediately and refuse to give it any thought, there would be no problem and thus no mental suffering. You would simply be living in reality. Of course, that's usually not what happens. A problem exists only in time. A problem can only exist in the past or in the future. And where do the past and future exist? In your mind. To acknowledge a problem, you must use your thoughts, and thoughts exist in time, not in the present moment. A problem needs to be labeled as a problem to actually exist. A problem exists only when you interpret a situation as being a problem, otherwise there is no problem. First, but it's a fundamental theory, and yeah, he goes and talks about the next section, but it's a fundamental theory. A problem needs to be labeled as a problem that actually exists. So the losing your legs example is a very far-fetched example, because if I lost my legs, I'd be pretty hopeless. I'd be like, I'd be pretty hopeless. I'd be like, I can't live out of my house, I can't move, I'll need help every day, I'd be pretty hopeless. But after a while, I'd be like, you know what, we're just going to really try to live in reality and live my life without legs. Find purpose in life, wherever you're at in life. People do not see life that way when it comes to finding purpose. Because with purpose in life, purpose comes from you like doing something that has meaning to you. And like not having legs, for example, you could write books, you could write movies. Will you go anywhere? It is an activity for you to do, because that is what you can do. You could work out, your spine still work, you could work out. You could do push-ups, you could do curls, you could do pull-ups in the wheelchair. Like, there are ways to find purpose and ways to fill your time. But you do have to think about that though. What you don't focus on doesn't exist. If you give your problems any attention, there would be no mental suffering. Imagine, wait, no. A problem will only exist when you give it attention. From your mind's perspective, what you don't give any thought to doesn't exist. So, honestly, with your problems in life, just don't pay attention to them. Now, yes, you have to fix them, but don't go like your whole, however how long, 16 hours you're up throughout the day, focus on that problem. Think about ways to solve it. Don't think of it as a problem. Think about ways to solve it. Give it good attention. Not a lot of attention, but give it good attention. Be like, I'm going to solve this problem, I'm going to figure it out. And then problem exists only in time, which I really love what it says here. A problem can only exist in the past or in the future. And where do the past and future exist? In your mind. Because you can't fix the past and you can't see the future. You can't. And when it says exist in your mind, what I really love about that line is because, do you ever think about that? Your past and your future right now only exist in your mind. You really got to think more about the present. That's what I'm trying to think about more, is the present. Where I'm at in life, where God has put me in life right now. Well, that's also another thing to think about, and that's the takeaway for the day. Live in the present and think about where God has put you in life right now. So really think about that. I want to thank you all for sitting with me through this book review. It was about problems, it was about pain, it was about mental suffering, 3 very different topics I've talked about on this channel, but I want to thank you all for watching. I hope you all live in the present, and I hope you all live in reality. Thank you all for watching. This is Master Your Emotions, and you all have a great day.